Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Um, Make sure before you start watching this video, you have watched the Pythagorean theorem video. That's going to be very helpful for some of the questions we look at later. So today what we're going to be looking at in our second video is trig ratios. We're starting trigonometry. And specifically, we're looking at trig ratios. Now, the steps you want to do when working with trig ratios are the following. Is first, know all. You have to know all three sides of the right triangle. If you do not know all three sides, use Pythagorean theorem. Step 2, circle important angle. Label sides is the third step, and step 4 is substitute into ratio. And you may also, it may be helpful to simplify ratio. These are all very, very helpful and important steps in figuring out and solving trig ratios. So make sure you have these written down. It's going to be very important when we switch at looking at an example here. So here is our triangle. We have a triangle here. I'm going to turn on my, look at this. There we go. So for our screen sketch here, what we're looking at is we're going to be writing some stuff in here. Notice it says in the right triangle, what we're looking at first is called tangent of an angle. Tangent we abbreviate is TAN. And when we say of an angle, means we're taking an operation of it. So tangent of some angle is equal to the opposite leg over the adjacent leg. And I'm going to show you what that means. So let's go through our steps. First, what we're looking at is, notice, tangent of A. I'm going to highlight A. This is a very, very important angle. This is our important angle. We know all three sides, 3, 4, 5. Boom, we know the sides. I'm going to highlight the important angle, or circle my important angle. Once you have done that, step 3 says label your sides. When we're labeling our sides, I always start with the same side we label first in a Pythagorean theorem problem, and that's the hypotenuse. Sorry, that is an abbreviation for hypotenuse. I know that that does not look like my best work, but you guys can see there. The other two sides, let me plug that in. All right. Next is based on our angle. This is why we highlight the angle. We need to label our opposite side. The opposite side is the side that is furthest away. That's our opposite side. That is very important. It's based off of this angle. And next we have our adjacent side. Adjacent side means right next to it. Now I know this can be confusing because also the hypotenuse is right next to it. That's why we label the hypotenuse first. Okay, we label the hypotenuse first, so we know this side must be the adjacent. The adjacent side cannot be the hypotenuse. So we've labeled our sides. That's step 3. Now we know in the trig ratio that tangent is equal to opposite over adjacent. It's told to us right here. For tangent, it'll always be opposite over adjacent. So for us, tangent is going to be the opposite side, 3, over the adjacent side, 4. Relatively straightforward. That's all we need to do. You're just labeling sides and writing out a ratio. Now sine, if we look here, sine of an angle, which we abbreviate as SIN, of some angle, is equal to the opposite leg over the hypotenuse. So if we look at this here, our opposite leg, right? Opposite hypotenuse, right? Our opposite leg is still 3. And now it's not going to be 4 because that's our adjacent. We're looking at the hypotenuse is 5. You guys, I'm sure you guys can see if you labeled this triangle wrong, all of these answers are going to be incorrect. Notice again, it's all based on, we're looking at tangent of A, sine of A, and now we're going to look at cosine of A. Cosine of A, which we abbreviate as COS, OS of an angle, is equal to the adjacent leg, or A, over the hypotenuse, H. So if we look at letter A, because again it's based off of A, adjacent is 4, the hypotenuse is 5. We cannot simplify these anymore. All you're looking at is labeling the triangle and substituting into the values. Where things can be a little bit tricky, in fact, I'm going to erase some of these out of the way. Where things can be a little tricky is now we're going to be looking at a different angle. Now we're going to be looking at angle C. Notice here, next we're asked to do tangent of C, sine of C, and cosine of C. This means we're switching angles. The important angle changed. This means we need to relabel our triangle. Anytime the angle changes, we need to relabel. Now the nice thing is the hypotenuse is going to stay the same. And that makes sense because, well, the right angle didn't move. This will always be the hypotenuse. What is going to change, though, is, well, our opposite side. Now, notice the opposite side of C is not this side here. The opposite side is the one furthest away. This side is now my opposite side. And this side is now my adjacent. So you can see why we need to circle the important angle, how important this is, and label each triangle. If you do not label those, you will get them incorrect. There is no way to get that correct if you do not label them. So now we go to substitute in these values. We're looking at, as we complete here, we look at tangent. Remember, tangent is opposite over adjacent. If we're looking at the opposite side in terms of tangent, the opposite side of C is 4. The adjacent side is 3. Notice that they're different from one. Tangent of A is different than tangent of C because their angles are different. Let's look at sine of C. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Our opposite side is 4. Our hypotenuse is 5. Next one, we look at cosine of C. Our opposite side here, or sorry, our adjacent side, because notice adjacent over hypotenuse is 3, and our hypotenuse is 5. So you can see how important it is when we're looking at these problems that we are focusing on our angles and labeling our sides. Please make sure you take a picture of this example. It'll be helpful for your notes. Cool. So guys, that covers how we set up using trig ratios and setting up equations. In our next video, we're going to be putting all of this together. I hope you guys found this helpful. Make sure you check out the next video as well.